I don't quite know if you guys understand what you're listening to here. This is a man who can look back and say, I've launched a satellite into the sky, right? And has learned about it, looked at it, understood it, and then gone, yeah, I think I could do it. Unbelievable vision. Unbelievable just sense of what is possible. And to see that linked to reading all these books around Renaissance movements and how these leaders decided to do it. And clearly the law didn't necessarily lead into a legal practice, but instead to do something even more impossible, to launch a satellite into the sky, but driven by vision that Africans would have access to information. Unbelievable. I don't know, it's almost moving to think we're sitting in the presence of someone who has done something so significant, and to be from the place we're sitting in, Ethiopia. So Noah, sorry to pause you, but yeah, please carry on. So how did you go about launching a satellite into the sky?
So the first thing is I had to, before quitting, I had to tell my wife. And not only that, but my daughter was just recently born when I was deciding, this is it. I'm going to go launch a satellite over Africa. And I went to mention the fact that I was now thinking of a great idea that I would tell her. So she thought about what I was saying, and she said, okay, stop joking. Tell me what it is that you want to tell me. I said, no. I want to launch a satellite. And she realized I was serious. And she said, why don't you go launch a satellite? And if it doesn't work, just get a good job at that time. And I decided to go ahead. I quit my job. I was working as a lawyer in a big firm, making a lot of money. And I quit the job, and the first thing I did was I put together a 12-page business plan that I can't find anywhere. I don't know what I've done with it, but it was the silliest business plan that you could have. It didn't have financials, it didn't have any of these things. It just was all about wanting to launch a satellite. And the people who I wanted to approach was a Japanese entrepreneur and really like a great Japanese gentleman from a very big Japanese family. His mother was Toyota, his father was Mitsubishi, something like that. He was really an awesome guy, awesome guy. So I sent him this document, and I had done something very important for him. So I sent him this document, and he immediately told me to get on the next plane to come to Tokyo to see him. I went to see him, and he sat me down and he says, Noah, you can't do that. You can't just launch satellites. I said, I'm going to launch a satellite. So he said, I will give you the money, which the money I was asking for at the time was $125,000. $125,000 couldn't launch a fly. And he knew as much, so he said, I'll give you the money, but you must promise me to go back to work. So I told him I don't need the money. If I was about money, I would stay where I am. But I really want to launch the satellite. And so he gave me the money, and something like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later, the money would dry. And so I would go for days and months without paying the mortgage. But I was dedicated to building this satellite. On July 23, 1990, I filed an application to build, launch, and operate a satellite with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission of, I was going to say of Ethiopia, of the US. And they asked me, why I am there. I said, because I want a license from you. You can't build a satellite without a license. It's illegal. Leave alone launch it and operate it. So I said, I need a license. So they said, but we're give licenses to America and people launching something within American territories. Why does America have jurisdiction to launch your satellite? And I said, America, there's no law that says America could allow me to launch a satellite, but there's no law that there's no law that says America can't give me such a license. So they said, so you think as FCC we should get into the clothing business because there's no law that says we can't get into the clothing business? And so we went through this back and forth. Then I went and convinced 9 African countries to give me a letter that I would file with the FCC that says if this satellite is launched, they would be happy to use it. So I know 9 ministers from 18 different countries, and I got my letters. I went to the FCC, and 11 months later, on June 18 or 19, I got a license from the FCC. This was pretty significant because you can't get a license for a small radio station in, I don't know, a place that's remote enough. But even at the smallest of towns, if you want to get a license for a radio station or a TV station, it is a long process that takes years. For them to give me a license over that many countries, it was just unheard of. And I got my license, and then 18 months later, I was able to convince 127 countries to allocate special frequencies, all the same frequencies across the globe, to allocate these frequencies for the purpose that I had said I would do, which is I would build a satellite radio across the globe, and you give me just the license. And they gave me the license, and I took that license and got the frequencies from the special body of the United Nations called the World Radio Conference, WRC. Once I got my frequencies, it took another year. By 1993, I convinced a whole bunch of big satellite manufacturing companies to compete with one another to give me a proposal so I can buy the satellite from them. And each one I went to would ask me, but where's the money? I say, I have the money. They say, you really have the money? Because it's serious. If you don't have the money, no, it's between you and me, it's serious. And I said, I have the money. What I didn't say is that I didn't have the money in my account, but in someone else's account, whom I will yet meet. So I'm joking a little bit, but I convinced international broadcasters that if I build a satellite, they will pay for it by leasing capacity on it. And I went to Voice of America, Deutsche Welle, Radio France International, Radio Netherlands, and convinced each one of them. I had to get one, Radio Netherlands, to say we will definitely lease capacity. And then I went to all the other broadcasters and I said, they're going to do that. Do you want to reserve your capacity in time before something happens, before other broadcasters get on and so forth? And so they got convinced, and I said to them, if you are convinced, lend me your top engineers so that they can talk to these satellite manufacturers as to the kind of satellite they want to see built for their use. So the international broadcasters were impressed, and they said, definitely we want to help design the satellite. And just the fact of their involvement gave the manufacturers of the satellite the belief that these international broadcasters are going to pay for the service. So I got one to look at the other in a certain way, and each sort of supported one another into creating this space, and no one was yet out of money. I told the manufacturers that this is going to be built. Let's use this occasion to analyze what kind of technical system should be in place, what kind of satellite should be in place. They agreed. They started chairing these conferences that we created for the manufacturers and the broadcasters to sit and face one another.